How far would you go to help the very people who destroyed your life? That was the question Kalen Dryden faced the moment he saw 5 wounded Apache warriors stumbling out of the trees toward his dying ranch. He had nothing left. Not land worth keeping, not a horse worth riding, not a family waiting inside the house. But when those warriors came toward his well, with empty hands and empty eyes, Kalen made a choice that would change a war nobody thought could ever end. 3 days without rain had turned the land into dust. Kalen dragged the bucket up from the well, his arms aching from repeating the same motion again and again. The rope was old and frayed. Every time he pulled it up, he wondered if today would be the day it snapped. But for now, it still held. The bucket reached the surface, and he set it down beside the fence post. Clean, cold water, the only thing his ranch still gave freely. Behind him stretched his land, broken and tired. The barn leaned to one side like it was ready to fall. The fields were dry. The corral held only 2 thin horses instead of 20. Nothing felt alive anymore except the well. Then he heard it. Movement in the brush to the east. Not slow, not careful, desperate. His hand went to his side, searching for a rifle he no longer owned. He'd sold it months ago, just to buy feed. All he had left was the knife hidden in his boot, and even that felt small now. 5 figures stepped out from the tree line. Apache warriors. 3 men, 2 women, all of them wounded. One man was barely standing, leaning heavily on the others. The woman in front walked strong, but Kalen saw the blood on her shoulder. She watched the ranch the way a hawk watches a field, looking for danger before it came. Nayeli. He didn't know her name yet, but he could feel her authority in the way the others moved around her. She stopped 30 feet away from the well. The others stopped with her. Her eyes studied the bucket of water. Then they studied him. Then the water again. Nobody spoke. The sun beat down on the back of his neck. The dry wind brushed across the empty fields. Kalen's breath felt stuck in his chest. The young warrior's hand moved toward his knife. He looked ready to attack at the smallest sign. They were desperate, hurting, hungry, thirsty. Kalen could see the pain in the way they stood, in the tremble of their legs, in the way the older man kept blinking like he was trying to stay conscious. Nayeli took 1 step forward. Her eyes never left him. She was waiting, waiting for the shot that wouldn't come, waiting for the trap, waiting for betrayal. She had lived too long in a world where trust got people killed. Kalen bent down slowly. 5 sets of eyes followed his movement. He picked up the bucket. Water rippled against the wooden sides. He carried it 3 steps toward them, then set it gently on the ground between them. Then he stepped back. Far enough that they could reach it without fear. His heart was pounding. His hands stayed steady. He had made his choice. Nayeli stared at him for a long moment. The world felt frozen, as if even the wind waited to see what she would do. Behind her, one of the warriors said something sharp in their own language. Nayeli didn't answer. She didn't look away from Kalen. Then the wounded man collapsed. His legs buckled and the warrior beside him dropped to his knees, trying to keep him upright. The sound of his body hitting the dirt broke the silence. Nayeli's eyes flashed with urgency. She moved. Not fast, but steady. Every step toward that bucket was cautious, controlled. She paused once, her gaze flicking back to Kalen as if checking for hidden weapons. When she reached the bucket, she knelt. The movement made her shoulder tremble with pain. Her hand touched the rim. She lifted it. She drank. Water ran down her chin and soaked into the cloth around her neck. She didn't wipe it away. She drank until her chest rose with a deep breath. Then she stood and carried the bucket to the others. The youngest warrior grabbed it first, drinking like a man who had been fighting the desert alone. The older warrior took slow, measured sips. Then they helped the collapsed man drink, though most of it spilled down his chin. Kalen didn't move. He didn't blink. He just watched. Nayeli came back to him, the empty bucket in her hand. She studied him again. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was rough, shaped by a language not her own. Kalen looked at the warriors, hurt, exhausted, barely holding on. "You needed it," he said. The young warrior snapped something harsh in Apache, angry and suspicious. Nayeli silenced him with a single raised hand. "Your people kill mine," she said. "Mine kill yours. You give water." "I give water," Kalen said simply. "That's all." But it wasn't all. And they both knew it. She stepped closer, close enough for him to see pain around her eyes. Close enough that if she wanted to kill him, she could. "You let us take more?" she asked, pointing to the well. "Yes." "You let us stay until he can walk?" She nodded toward the fallen man. "Yes." "Why?" she asked again. Kalen looked at the empty land behind him, at the barn with its broken boards, at the silent house where no laughter lived anymore. He swallowed hard. "Because I've already lost everything worth losing." She didn't speak, but something changed in her face. Something shifted. Before either of them could say more, a shout came from behind her. A warning. The older warrior pointed toward the trees to the east. Riders. 6 of them. Coming fast. Rifles glinted in the sun. Nayeli and her warriors tensed instantly. Weapons drawn. Backs straightened. Fear sharpening into readiness. Kalen steps forward without thinking, placing himself between the riders and the Apache. His feet moved before his mind caught up. Garrett Fisk, hard-faced, hungry for power Fisk, rode at the front. He pulled up his horse. "Step aside, Dryden." Kalen did not move, not an inch. This was the moment everything would change. And none of them knew what was coming next. Kalen stood between the armed riders and the wounded Apache, his boots planted in the dry dirt like roots holding the world together. The sun burned overhead. The wind held its breath. Behind him, 5 exhausted warriors struggled to stay standing. In front of him, 6 mounted men gripped rifles with hands hungry for violence. Garrett Fisk pulled his reins tight, his horse snorting and pawing the ground. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Kalen blocking his path. "Move aside, Dryden," Fisk said. "We're taking them, alive if they cooperate, dead if they don't." Kalen didn't move. "They came here for water," he said. "They're hurt. They haven't attacked anyone." Fisk leaned forward in his saddle, his voice low and cold. "They raided the Morrison place, killed cattle, burned supplies. You want to stand up for them after everything they've done to your people?" The words struck like stones, but Kalen kept his voice steady. "They didn't touch Morrison Ranch." Fisk's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "Kalen, I know what you lost," he said. "I know what they took from you, so step aside and let us do what needs doing." Kalen felt the old ache of memory pulling at him. His wife, his little girl, their laughter, their screams, their graves. But the truth he had learned later, about who had really killed them, burned hotter than hatred. Nayeli stepped closer behind him, her presence steady and firm. She didn't touch him. She didn't tell him what to do. She just stood there, ready to defend her people, even if it meant dying. The youngest Apache warrior whispered something sharp in her language. He was scared, trying to hide it, but Kalen saw the fear in his shaking hands. Fisk's men shifted uneasily in their saddles, rifles still pointed. Their horses sensed the tension, stamping the ground nervously. "Kalen," Fisk warned, "don't make me choose between you and the law." "You don't get to call this law," Kalen replied. "Not today." Before Fisk could snap back, a weak voice rose behind them. "Please, please help." Everyone turned. A young woman stumbled out of the tree line. Dusty blonde hair, torn dress, scratches on her arms. She was gasping for breath, her eyes wide with terror. She looked at Fisk, then at Kalen, then at Nayeli. And when her eyes landed on the Apache warriors, she screamed. She dropped to her knees, shaking violently. "No, no, don't hurt me, please. Please don't." Nayeli froze, hurt flashing briefly across her face before she hid it. Kalen rushed forward and knelt beside the woman. "Hey, hey, look at me," he said gently. "You're safe. What happened?" She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "Morrison Ranch," she whispered. "At dawn, they came, so many of them, not 5, not 6, dozens, I ran. My brother told me to run." Her words cracked, full of horror. "I heard the shots. I heard them die." Silence fell over the clearing. Fisk's face twisted. "You're confused," he said. "These Apache right here." "No," she said, shaking her head. "It wasn't them. The ones who attacked, they were wearing Apache clothes, but they weren't Apache." Kalen's chest tightened. There it was, the truth he had carried alone for years. Someone was using Apache clothing to start raids, to fuel the war, to steal land. Fisk's eyes darkened. He shifted in his saddle, jaw clenching hard. "Girl's delirious," he muttered. "Don't listen to." "She's telling the truth," Kalen said. Sarah, he didn't know her name yet, but he would, looked up at him with desperate eyes. "You believe me?" she whispered. "I do," Kalen said. Fisk spat in the dirt. "Enough. We're taking them. Last chance, Dryden." Quote. But Kalen didn't move. Nayeli stepped up beside him. Maddo and Kahana stood behind her, warriors on one side, settlers on the other, Kalen in the middle. Everyone waited for someone else to make the first move. Then it came, a gunshot in the distance. Then another. Then shouting. Sarah's face went white. "That's my home," she whispered. "Morrison Ranch is under attack again." Everyone turned toward the sound. Even the horses lifted their heads, ears twitching at the chaos rolling across the hills. Kalen felt a cold truth settle inside him. "It's happening again," he said quietly. "Someone's stirring this war on purpose, using both sides, killing for land." Nayeli met his eyes, and in that moment, she understood him, fully. Then Kahana called out from behind them, pointing north. Movement. Warriors. At least 15 Apache riders emerged from the trees, heading straight for them. Nayeli's people, following her trail, ready for blood. At the same time, from the west, more riders appeared. Fisk's reinforcements. More than 20 armed settlers. Both sides saw each other. Both sides saw Nayeli standing beside Kalen. Both sides saw Kalen protecting Apache. Both sides reached for weapons. "Kalen," Nayeli whispered, fear flickering in her eyes for the first time. "If they see us together, they'll think betrayal," he finished. "Equally dangerous, equally deadly. Nobody would survive the next 5 minutes if this turned into a fight." "Is there a way to stop them?" Kalen asked. Nayeli nodded slowly. "Old way," she said. "Smoke. 3 columns, then 2, then 1. It means talk, not fight. But both sides must agree to see it." "And if they don't?" Sarah asked, her voice cracking. "Then we die," Nayeli said simply. Nobody argued. Nobody ran. Instead, they moved. Kalen, Nayeli, Sarah, Maddo, Kahana. They all ran to gather green wood, building a fire fast enough to fight the clock. Their hands shook. Their breaths came hard. Their hearts pounded. Kalen struck the flint. The fire caught. Thick white smoke rose into the sky. 3 columns. 2. 1. The Apache riders slowed. The settlers pulled their horses back. Both sides stared at the rising smoke. No one fired. Not yet. Not while that smoke still climbed toward the sun. Kalen stood tall beside Nayeli. Sarah stood near him. Maddo and Kahana stood on the other side. A wounded Apache in the barn. A terrified settler girl by the well. Fisk pacing, furious. And now 2 armies staring at them, waiting for a single reason to kill each other. But the smoke kept rising. Peace, thin as a thread, held for one fragile breath. But it wouldn't hold for long, because Fisk wasn't finished, and the war wasn't done. Not yet. The smoke drifted upward in slow, pale columns rising against the bright sky, like a signal begging the world to stop for just one moment. Both sides, the Apache riders in the north and the armed settlers in the west, watched the pattern change from 3 lines to 2, then 1, a message older than any treaty. A plea to talk before blood touched the ground. Kalen stood still, the heat of the fire brushing against his back. Nayeli stood beside him, her injured shoulders stiff but her eyes sharp. Sarah hovered near the barn, torn between terror and determination. Mato and Kahana held their weapons low, showing they were not there to attack, but not ready to die without defending themselves. The tension felt heavy enough to crush the earth beneath their feet. The Apache war chief stepped out from the front line, tall and scarred, a man who carried years of battles in his eyes. His voice rang across the clearing in his own language, deep and steady. Nayeli answered him, her tone respectful but strong, explaining every detail of what had happened. About the water, about the ambush, about the truth behind the fake raids. The war chief listened. Then Fisk stepped forward from the settler side, his mouth curled into a sneer. He didn't wait for anyone else to speak. "Don't listen to her lies," he shouted. "Don't listen to his. You all know what these people have done. This smoke is a trick." Kalen turned to him. "Fisk, stop. They never raided Morrison Ranch. They were here. You saw it yourself." Fisk pointed a shaking hand at Sarah. "She's scared, confused. She don't know what she saw." Quote, Sarah stepped forward, her voice rising with courage she didn't know she had. "I know exactly what I saw," she said, glaring at Fisk. There were more than 20 attackers, wearing Apache clothing, organized, moving like trained soldiers. She looked between the two groups, but they weren't Apache. The Apache riders murmured among themselves. Some nodded, some looked confused, some suspicious, but they were listening. Fisk's jaw tightened. His voice rose louder. "These people killed Dryden's wife and child." Kalen stepped forward before anyone could react. "No," he said, his voice deeper than he expected. "My family was murdered by settlers dressed as Apache. They wanted land. They wanted war." He looked straight at Fisk. "You knew that." Fisk flinched, just barely, but everyone saw it. The young rider beside him, Collins, looked sick. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling on the reins. "Kalen, don't," Fisk warned, but Collins suddenly shouted, his voice cracking. "He told us where to find the trails. Told us the Apache were planning attacks. Told us we had to hit first or lose everything." A gasp swept across both sides. The war chief barked sharp questions at Nayeli. She answered quickly, her hands moving as she translated Collins' words. Kahana stepped up, his weathered face hard. "3 nights ago," he said in broken English, "I saw settlers wearing Apache clothes. Many tracks. Too many. I followed a little. Saw they go to Morrison direction." He paused. "I saw Fisk." Fisk paled. "Lies," he spat. "All of you, liars." But his men had already turned on him. One rider dismounted and stepped away, then another, then Collins. The wall of armed settlers began to crumble as they backed away from their leader, understanding dawning on their faces. Fisk saw his control slipping and reached for his pistol. But the Apache war chief moved like lightning. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and struck Fisk's wrist with the flat of his blade. The gun fell to the dirt. 2 Apache warriors were on Fisk in an instant, pinning his arms, binding his wrists. Not violently, not cruelly, just with the calm certainty of justice long overdue. Fisk struggled, rage twisting his face. "I was protecting this land," he shouted. "Without me, you all would have lost everything." "No," Sarah said, stepping closer. "You didn't protect us. You destroyed us." Her voice broke, but she didn't look away from Fisk. "You killed my family." Fisk froze, shock flickering for half a second before turning into something cold and empty. The war chief stepped back and spoke again, his voice deep as thunder. Nayeli translated, "He will face the territorial marshal. Both Apache and settlers will testify. Together, truth must stand on both sides." For the first time in years, Kalen felt something inside him loosen. Something painful and heavy that had stayed trapped in his chest since the day he buried his family. Justice. Real justice. Not revenge. Not war. Truth. The Apache warriors stepped aside. Fisk's own men formed a second line, ready to escort him to the marshal. 2 former enemies, now united by truth, took hold of the ropes and began leading Fisk toward the horses. It was done. It was over. Not the whole war, not the whole history, But this day, this moment, was different. The first day without lies. As the Apache began to turn toward the north, Takakoda emerged from the barn, held upright by Kahana and Mato. His breathing stronger, his eyes clearer. He looked at Kalen and nodded once, slow and meaningful. Nayeli translated softly. "He says he owes you his life. His family will remember." Kalen shook his head. "No debt," he said, "just water." Nayeli stepped closer to him, her voice quiet. "You gave more than water, Kalen Dryden. You gave a chance for peace." He looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, at the scars she carried, at the hope she didn't speak aloud. "You took that chance," Kalen said. "You trusted me when you had every reason not to." For the first time, Nayeli smiled. Not a big smile, not loud or bright. A small one, real, soft, a smile that looked like healing. "Maybe," she said, "this is how new stories begin." She turned to join her riders. Sarah stepped to Kalen's side. "What happens now?" she asked. Kalen looked out across his broken land. The sun was dropping in the sky, spreading gold across the fields. "We rebuild," he said. "All of us." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Then I want to help." Nayeli paused at the tree line, glancing back at them. "We return tomorrow," she called, "to talk more, to work, to fix what was broken." Kalen nodded. "I'll be here." The Apache warriors disappeared into the trees, moving not like enemies fleeing, but like people heading home. The settlers rode toward the west, with Fisk tied between them, returning with something stronger than violence, truth. And Kalen stood alone at his well, the bucket empty but clean, the fire dying, the sky wide and open. A small peace had begun, not with treaties, not with armies, but with a single bucket of water offered from one man to another. One simple act that changed everything. Kalen lowered the bucket back into the well. The rope held. The water rose. The future waited.